This video is a lot longer than my usual, but we are looking at using Photoshop and we are going to create an image, a self-portrait using the Day of the Dead style. So the first thing I'm doing here is I am opening an A4 page. Now depending on what version of Photoshop you have, this may look slightly different, but I am making sure that my resolution is nice and high, it's at 300, and that I've got full colours. The next thing I'm doing is I am opening my self-portrait that I'm going to work from. So in this instance, I've just got it down in my downloads. So I'm opening then the image. Now I don't want to work directly on my image. So once I've got it opened, I'm going to select the picture and I'm going to copy it into my A4 page. So you'll see now there are two tabs along the top of the page. So I'm using my Marquee tool to draw a rectangle to select the area I want. I've copied it, I've gone back into my A4 page and then I have pasted it. Now while you are in the select tool, which is kind of like an arrow, if you have show transformation controls selected at the top, it allows you to change the size of your image. Now again, depending on what version of Photoshop you have, you may need to hold down Shift to make sure that the proportions stay. You don't want your face to become stretched. Once you're happy with the size, hit Enter to apply the changes. Now I don't particularly want to see my classroom in the background, so I have used the Lasso tool to draw around my head. Now how this tool works is for each point that you click, it starts to draw a line around the image. So I am drawing the whole way around my head. I then ran it all the way around the outside of the image and I have deleted that out. So you can either you can clear it or you can hit delete. The next thing I wanted to do was I wanted to add in a bit of colour and I thought a nice deep red would work well with the Day of the Dead theme. So when you're happy with that, then it's time to be actually adding the edits. Now you want to work on a new layer because you don't want to be drawing directly on the photograph of yourself. So if you just go to layer, a new layer, that means all of the colouring, the drawing that you're going to do is on a separate layer, which means that you can edit the transparency so you can see the image through in the background. Now, as the Day of the Dead looks at skulls, the first thing I've done is I am drawing around the eyes. I've used the same Lasso tool because it was just a slightly awkward shape. I've made a selection and then I've used the Paintbucket to paste into the eye. Alternatively, you can use the pencil and you could just colour over the eye. So I've repeated that. And you can see here I can change the transparency, which allows me to see the eyes. I've then used my Lasso tool again, drawn around my eyes and cleared out the black so that I can see my eyes through the decoration. Again, with the Day of the Dead style, there's quite often a lot of flowers. It's about celebrating the lives of those that have passed away, so you tend to have life of nature alongside kind of death imagery. So I've looked at adding some bright colours around the eyes to give a sort of floral element. So in the pencil tool, I've decided to choose pink. I then need to get the pencil to a size that I am happy with. You can see in the top left, there's lots of different options. You can choose how hard or soft the edges of the pencil are, and you can choose how large you want it to be. Once I'm happy, I have begun to draw around the outside of my eye using this tool, and I have repeated that for both images, both sides of the face. If you find it helps, you can have a look at images of the Day of the Dead for some inspiration. But as I said, the floral element comes through quite commonly. Again, you can play with the transparency of your layer just on the right side in the layer toolbar to see what it would look like if you faded it out a little bit. Now the next thing I'm going to do is a large flower in the forehead. And again, I am just using my pencil tool to do this. Changing my colour and changing the size of the pencil makes this really easy to do. After I drew the flower, I wanted to add on a cross. By holding down the shift key, once you have clicked, you can bring the pencil tool in a straight line, which made that much easier to complete. Now, don't worry if you do something you don't like. I thought I would try outlining my flower, but when I looked at it, I wasn't happy. So just by going to edit and step backwards, you can remove any mistakes that you make. Now, I wanted to add leaves around my flower. However, I felt that the shape was a little bit awkward to do with a pencil. So here I've used my Lasso tool again to make a selection. Once I'm happy with the shape, I can then use the Paintbucket tool to add a green colour into my leaf shape. I can repeat that then. In this case, I've done it 3 times until I'm happy with my image. And again, it is up to you how much detail you want to add. After I'd drawn up my leaves, I've gone in and I've used my pencil tool again in a yellow tone, and I've added a few veins onto the leaves. Now, some of this can be quite fiddly. Just take your time, and remember, if you make a mistake, you just have to go edit, step backwards. Now that tool does have its limitations. There's only so many steps you can go back with it. Now with the mouth, again, it tends to look very much skull-like. I used the Marquee tool here and the Paintbucket just to bring in a large white section for the background. I'm then using my pencil tool in black to draw in my teeth. Now this is a little bit fiddly. Just take your time, and remember, as you can see here, I'm now going into my rubber tool, and you can remove areas that haven't worked quite right. So again, with the rubber tool, you change the size in the same way you do with the pencil tool, and you can remove those excess areas of white that have appeared behind my teeth. Now don't worry about making it absolutely perfect. As you can see, my image isn't perfect in any way. However, when you zoom out, it still looks fine. Now, in terms actually of zooming in and out, you can use the control and the plus button, or the control and the dash button, or on the left side bar you can see there's a small magnifying glass which you can use to zoom in and out. It tends to be, I'm using the shortcuts most often in this video. So I've continued on with my teeth. And again, rubbing out any excess areas of white. And where I think I've missed a little bit of white, I've just gone in with my pencil tool and have coloured that little section in. Again, with the skull theme then starting to become a little bit more obvious. And again, that continues through with the shape you can see on the nose. Now, what's important as well with your Day of the Dead theme is there is lots of decorative elements. Now again, it's up to you how you want to apply these. One of the easiest ways is just by using the pencil tool and adding in dots. Now you'll see in a lot of the images there's swirls, very common, but they are quite tricky to do. So you'll see here I wasn't happy with it, so I've removed that element from my image. And it is fine if you make mistakes to just take that step backwards or rub them out if you aren't happy with it. Now, one of the very handy things about Photoshop is if you do something that you are pleased with, you can copy it and paste it. So you can see here I've gone with my swirl patterns again. I was happier with it this time, but I didn't want to have to try and do a mirror image on the other side. So I have got my Lasso tool and I have drawn around the area that I want to copy and paste. Once that's selected, I can hit copy and then paste, and it will repeat. You can then go into edit and transform and flip horizontal, or you can just, if you've got the show transformation controls selected, you can just use the arrows at the sides to drag it into the opposite shape. Now you can see here I merge my two layers. The bit that has been copy and pasted becomes a completely separate layer, so it's important that you reattach that to your other drawn elements. So I've just done that by selecting both layers in the layer bar on the right clicking, and then merging the two layers. So you can see it goes back to just having my colour layer with the patterns on it, my photograph layer, and then a white background. After that, I've gone back to doing my floral elements, and I'm just using the same techniques that I have been using throughout this video with the pencil tools. And I've just dropped the transparency down because I wanted to rub out where the flower goes over the top of the chin. So that allowed me to see my face through the image, and I've just been able to then rub out the bottom of the flower where it was going below my chin. So now I'm playing with my transparency. I'm feeling fairly happy with this image, but I want to be able to see a little bit of the photograph through. So again, just with that layer bar, I've been able to drop down the transparency. Now I wanted to add in some flowers. Best images you can work from are ones with a white background, because it is much easier to delete those out. So I wanted a rose. I've used my selection tool. I'm selecting the inverse, so I can clear out everything but the rose. And there's a very handy tool, which is the magic wand tool, which will select anything in the same colour. Now you need to make sure you're in the correct layer when you're doing this. As you can see in the right bar, I'm now in a separate layer to my previous images. When I go into my magic wand tool, the tolerance up at the top is set very low. I would advise having it around 30. I call that how fussy the kind of selection is. If you've got it very low, the colours have to be completely the same to work. If it's set very high, you'll find it selects anything that might be slightly light or slightly dark or a bit similar. Now that I've removed the background, I'm using just the rubber tool to rub out the stem. And then I'm going to go in and just change the angle of the flower. So when I'm in my select tool, again, you can see I've got show transformation control selected at the top, and I can then move my flower around. When you're happy with it, just hit enter, which will apply the changes. I've then duplicated my layer just in the layer options at the top, and I can then add in a couple of flowers together. When you're happy that your image is completed, it's then about saving it. Now this has multiple layers, which makes it quite a complex image. So by going into layer and flattening the image, it means that it becomes one solid picture. I can then go in and save it as a picture file. If you save it as a Photoshop file, you can't view it without opening Photoshop. However, if you save it as a JPEG, as I'm doing here, it becomes just an ordinary picture file, and you can print that to present in your sketchbooks. So now it's your turn to give this a go. Please flick back and forwards through this video to aid you with it. Right, off you go.